Hi everyone, it's your boy Zach, and I just watched Conan the Barbarian last night. Very, very dramatically. I rented it on YouTube. So for people who don't know, I didn't know this like 2 months ago. You can just straight up rent a movie on YouTube. So Netflix, it's either there or it isn't. Amazon Prime, it's either included with Prime or you got to rent it. And then YouTube is just rent it. I mean, they always got those. Some guy in like Eastern Bulgaria will break up an entire movie into like 4-minute increments and at $3.99. But you know how it is. Like you rent the movie, they're like, you got it for 48 hours. You're like, what are you talking? That's way. Yeah, I finished it 5 minutes before the rental stops. So the rental doesn't go from like the minute you if you rent it on 2:35 p.m. on Tuesday, it doesn't click off on 2:35 p.m. on Thursday. It clicks off at midnight, and I mean right at midnight. So I rented it, and then I had a trip I need to go on. No, it's very, very dramatic. Now the good thing is this is that 80s style of filmmaking that holds my attention really well. I talk about this all the time for modern stuff. I sometimes literally watch like 1 or 2 minutes at a time. Because it's too jokey, there's too much stuff on the screen, it's like not committed. One of the things I really, really like about this movie is everyone is so into making it. There's either people who've loved Conan their whole life, or Schwarzenegger had never even heard of Conan until basically they tried to get him to play the role, but he instantly got it and liked it. And honestly, I think it's Schwarzenegger's biggest role. I did something I usually don't do. Between finishing a movie and reviewing it, is I'll do a little research. So I was reading about the making of the movie, and man, everyone, no, this was not just a paycheck for anyone. Every single person was like 100% excited on board to do this thing. So it's kind of famous for having an Oliver Stone script and directed by John Milius. And, I should probably explain who those people are, because not everyone's 45 years old. So Oliver Stone is a Vietnam vet. He started screenwriting in the late 70s, early 80s. Some good genre stuff like Conan the Barbarian. Then he started doing writer-director. He would do political stuff, but it was like, had a lot of mainstream success. For a while there, 5-10 years, every Oliver Stone movie was a event. It was an event. But he started just in genre flicks like horror and sword and sorcery. And then John Milius was like one of the peers of Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. He was like the Republican, although it was like a California Republican. So he's like a regular California guy, but he owns guns. So he was like the real like hard ass. He liked extreme violence and kind of like old school values. So he was really, really excited about this. He also he had a good little heyday. I mean, a lot of stuff, Apocalypse Now, he was connected to, or he wrote the script, sorry. I'm blanking on the other stuff, but he had a good, about 15-year run. I think the last thing he did that anyone would know about is the Rome HBO series from like 10 years ago. I was really never into Conan or sword and sorcery. I'm starting to get into it now. I do remember when this movie came out, I remember it being kind of like a laughingstock, because as popular as, and I talk about this on my other channel when I talk about comic books from the 1990s, people right now are like, oh my gosh, those comics were so silly. We were saying that back then. When you watch something and you say, oh, this is so 80s, this is so cheesy, it was cheesy back then. So we just saw a guy with these giant muscles, and he was like swinging a sword, and you're just like, okay, whatever. Like, some people would see it, but it was usually like stoners and Hessians. Hessians are what we called stoners in Nebraska. And then the other one came out and kind of flopped, so the Conan thing kind of went away pretty quickly. But man alive, I've got to say, this movie is excellent. And it's this weird kind of excellent because it's like one blade of grass away from being just some like trash straight to video movie. but the thing that distinguishes it is, attention to detail, quality. I mean, you just talk about, like, you go and you type in, like, the sword. Oh my gosh, that sword was like a big deal. It was a high quality prop, and then it wasn't just like Schwarzenegger, you have muscles, you're Conan. He went through all kinds of training and riding horses and swords and gymnastics and acrobatics, and you really do see it. I mean, even just the way the people move. Sandahl Bergman, who plays Valeria, she was a dancer. There's a point where they're, sneaking into a castle, and that there's like this generic kind of like sneaky movement that people do in movies and TV, and it's just kind of like you kind of take these little short steps and you kind of hunch your back a little bit. But this is like this is a dancer, so when she kind of slithers over a balustrade, like, it looks so cool. It's hard to explain if you don't see it, but just reference the scene where Conan, Valeria, and Subutai, something like that. I'm just gonna call them Subutai. They get this black and white camouflage makeup on their bodies, and they sneak into a not black, distinctly not black and white. There's some aspects of it being camouflage. I think of it's more of just war paint, just meant to just freak people out. So it's one of the things I like about this is they did a sequel, but there's really no point. This is really a one and done. There was supposed to be, I think Schwarzenegger was signed for like 5 movies, and he's been talking about playing King Conan, but nobody wants to see him in his current withered form. This is not an endorsement. I'm just repeating something I heard, and I'm going to say afterwards, this is not an endorsement. But my buddy, who used to really be into weightlifting, I always talk about, I go, why does Stallone look pretty good and Schwarzenegger just looks like shit? And my buddy says that's the difference between steroids and HGH, human growth hormone. Stallone was more of an HGH guy. Schwarzenegger was steroids. He goes, yeah, that they're basically the same age. One looks like pretty good shape, and the other one just looks horrible. Nobody wants to see a King Conan movie. I mean, no. Oh God, no. But they talk about it every couple years. So the thing about this, like I said, it starts off with him as a child. It ends with this little coda of him as King Conan on his throne. It's basically everything you need to know. Here's the other thing that's interesting. Apparently, the Conan from the novels and the Conan from the movie are quite significantly different. In fact, it looks like they melded Kull the Conqueror with Conan the Barbarian. If you remember Kull, for a while, Marvel also did a Kull comic, and then Kevin Sorbo played him in a movie. Conan's definitely like a cooler sounding name, but it sounds like the Conan from the movie is actually a blending of, like, they were saying Conan was never a slave in the Robert E. Howard books, but it starts off when he was a kid. It explains why he leaves Cimmeria. He gets enslaved. There's a lot of like interesting choices. So whenever I think about Conan, I think about Conan actually from the Marvel comics, where he's at his prime. He just tells everyone to pound sand or chops their head off. All kinds of, wenches love him. But this kind of brings him, and honestly, this is a quality movie. There's like these interesting writing choices. Like, so he gets enslaved, and then he's used as a, what do you call it, a gladiator slave. And he's got the guy who freed him, but the guy who freed him, the guy who was his master and then freed him from that, bought him from, he had to do this wheel of pain, turn this circle around in the desert. I'm assuming there was some sort of mill below ground. It wasn't just turning for no reason. Maybe it was. But it made him strong. They sold him off. Actually, it might have just been, because it started off with like 8 kids pushing it, and then over the years it's just Arnold. So it might have just been a way to like winnow out the weak, and then here's a strong slave, and then they sell the... So he frees him, but it's not in any kind of like a dramatic thing. You can just see that the slave owner grows to kind of admire and respect Arnold, and he's drunk and he just chops his chain and lets him go. So then he's kind of out in the wild and he starts getting on his ventures. The whole thing is to get him revenge on Thulsa Doom, who killed his family. One of the other really interesting things is, 20 years go by between his family being killed and him getting revenge on Thulsa Doom. Thulsa Doom is kind of just like a regular warlord when Arnold is a kid, when Conan is a kid. But by the time he's an adult, Thulsa Doom is this supernatural cult leader. Or I guess technically they said he's 1,000 years old. Maybe he was. But I think I think he's lying about being 1,000 years old. It seems like he got those supernatural powers in the ensuing 20 years. So there's a one point where, it's revealed that, you killed my family. And Thulsa Doom has this like very thoughtful expression. He's like, oh, yeah, I used to do stuff like that. Like, I don't know if he would say he was sorry so much as he just kind of acknowledges that he used to be different. So in one way, it's kind of a simple story. It's just a straight line to revenge. But Conan really goes through a lot of stages and growth. There's a good point where it's actually, he goes from two types of slavery, or maybe more precisely, it's from an imprisonment to a slavery. So first he's just doing the wheel of pain. It's making him stronger, but it's a horrible life. So then he gets sold and he's enslaved, but he gets to, there's a scene where they're showing all his victories in the gladiator pit. And it says something like, I think it's the narrator, Mako, who plays the wizard. He says, Conan realized that he had worth. And that's something you wouldn't exactly think, in a quote, dumb, unquote, sword and sorcery movie that, in a situation that's horrible, it still has some sort of growth moment for the character. So I love that stuff. When I was reading about the behind the scenes, they were talking about Max von Sydow and, oh, God. I can't believe I can't think of his name. The character who plays Thulsa Doom, the voice of Darth Vader. Who, by the way, I remember always thinking, he was, quote, old when I was a kid, and I think we're the same age right now. I look at him playing Thulsa Doom, and I was like, he looks so young. I think he might be my age or younger when he's playing Thulsa Doom. I'm going to go look up his age when they filmed the movie. But it seems like it was a really great crew, and so they keep talking about how Max von Sydow and Darth Vader voice. It's embarrassing. What is it? I think it's one of those names where it's like they always do his middle initial in there. That's embarrassing. So those two really great actors, they were both mentoring him through the movie, and you can really see, it feels like there are, I do the little jokey title that this is a musical biopic, because there's long stretches of no dialogue. There's just acting and a very, very good score by, I believe, Basil Polidorus. And so, it's not just a blank expression. Arnold is giving a pretty soulful performance, and just everyone is good. Even people like Sandal Bergman, who I guess didn't have a lot of acting experience, just freaking fantastic. So there is a kind of a weird tone where it's like, and I read that it was a little controversial because the people who wanted a light adventure, it was a little too gory, but the people who wanted a gory, slasher film, it was a little too silly. I will say there's some stuff that's just plain fun. Even I, just watching on my phone, I noticed some stuff. At one point, Conan is in a throne room and he's going around slashing someone, and you can tell that they had one of the guards. He literally had a handful of makeup blood. So he goes up to grab his wound, but he's actually splashing the blood on himself. And it's actually a pretty good trick. I was like, that's pretty slick. The other thing, gosh, I gotta tell you, I just feel like CGI just ruined movies. Okay, everything's real. I know that sounds dumb, but it's so exciting to me to see the lead character on a horse in the, I think they filmed somewhere in Spain. riding through this desert. It's so cool. It's so cool to me to see Arnold Schwarzenegger going up a mountain with all these craggy boulders, and then he goes into a little cave, and it's a real cave, it's a real mountain. I can't, like, it's the freaking coolest thing ever. Like, the sword is an actual steel sword. The people are in shape because they got themselves in shape with, a lot of help from steroids with Schwarzenegger, but there's like all these long times where, they'll just show, so Conan is on the tree of woe. He's crucified to a tree in the desert, drying out, and buzzards are circling around him, and then they're going to eat him. In a movie right now, it would just be like this little 30-second montage, and he would have some, there would be some Robert Downey Jr. joke. No, you just see his skin drying, flaking off. He's like moaning in pain and then just kind of passing out. And it goes for a while. Like, he's on the tree of woe for a freaking while. And everything, even just like the wheel of pain. Like, it's kind of a montage, but it's a really long montage. Like, they really, really hammer it home. There's all this stuff. When he loses someone dies, there'll just be a scene of him just like mourning the character. I was just like, God, I like this style of movie making so much, and I wish they would bring it back. Just everything's a joke, a quip, special effects. That's why my brain switches off, because I think at some point my brain goes, oh, this doesn't matter and nobody really cares. This is just 50 effects houses and all these actors just doing like 2-second shots, you know what I mean? Like, you didn't really have to dedicate yourself, so nothing feels like it has any weight or any worth. Like they say, Conan learned that he had worth. This movie learned that it had worth. I'm sure everyone at some point started, they're like, I'm making this movie, Conan the Barbarian. Everyone probably laughed when they heard that. But I think somewhere, a couple weeks in, they go, oh wait, this is a really good movie. Like, people actually care. I always say that on my other channel. The one thing you can't pay people to do is to care. You can pay them to pretend to care, but give someone $1 million and they won't care. You can give someone $10 and they will, and it's the most valuable thing. Great movie. It's not my, Sword and Sorcery is not my cup of tea. I've never read a Conan novella, or I was researching it. They said it wasn't even novels. It was like a novella and some short stories and a couple of poems. I go, oh, okay. I just assumed it was like 10 novels. But fantastic movie, fun movie. It's kind of hard to peg because it has kind of like a child. I'd basically say it's for teenagers, or it's rated R, and it does earn that rated R rating. But fantastic movie. Go check it out. Conan the Barbarian, the one from 1982. I'm probably also going to rent that one from, I think, 2011 or 2012, which I hated but also liked. It was great casting, everything looked cool, but if I remember correctly, it had really weird tone and pacing issues. But I'll probably review that one soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.